Welcome to our ongoing classes on Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 universal Noachite commandments. And we are currently in the middle of a series of classes, and our text that we are using is the Encyclopedia Talmudit, the Talmudical Encyclopedia, volume 6, Vav, Krach Vav, and the entry is Ger Toshav. So we're in the middle of learning and discussing Ger Toshav. And currently we are on page, or I should say column, Reish Tzadik Gimel, 293. And we're actually in the middle of discussing the attitude and the interaction of the Jew towards the Ger Toshav. And Ger Toshav would be your resident alien or something of that nature. Means someone who is living in the land of Israel. And in last class we were discussing that there are different opinions as to what a Ger Toshav is, whether it's a person who formally in front of a Jewish court, a Beis Din, accepts upon himself not to be an idolater, or is it necessary for him to accept upon himself to keep all 7 of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach? That was the discussion. Be that as it may, he needs to formally accept it in front of a Jewish court, or at least in front of what we call 3 chaverim, 3 prominent or 3 learned or very observant or scrupulous Jews. Now, we're talking about the relationship that a Jew has towards a Ger Toshav. A Ger Toshav is by no means Jewish. He is absolutely not Jewish. However, he is not your typical average non-Jew, which would be referred to either as a goy or a nachri. That's not a Ger Toshav. A Ger Toshav is a ben Noach, that's true, that's all of mankind. However, he has a certain status, and he gets certain rights within the Jewish community in the land of Israel, when all the Jews live in the land of Israel, as we will discuss later. So, the question is, in what way does a Jew need to treat him like a fellow Jew, although this man is not Jewish? And in what ways is he to be considered and treated like the regular non-Jew? Because he is a non-Jew. He's just not a regular non-Jew. And that brings us, I believe, to the 4th paragraph down, or 5th, in the middle of Reish Tzadik Gimel. Last time, let's just review this last paragraph. I'm pretty sure we did it, but just in case, I won't even read out loud the Hebrew for this paragraph. If a Jew and a Ger Toshav are traveling, for example, in the wilderness, in a desert, and the Jew has a flask of water, which is enough for survival for one person until they get to civilization. And if he drinks any less than this container of water, he will perish. So there isn't the option of having them split it, because if each one has half, then they both die. And if the Jew drinks it, then he is leaving the fellow to die. And if he gives it to the other fellow who's with him, then he himself will perish. So in such a case, the Jew is to drink the water that he has. And the reason is that the verse says that he shall live with you. And from that verse, we learn out that one's own life always takes precedence over the other person. Now, mind you, that is the exact same rule when you have 2 Jews traveling. So the same thing would apply, that a Jew who has the means to save one person, either himself or the other person, needs to save himself and to, unfortunately, allow the other person to perish. Now, in the case of the Ger Toshav, who's with the Jew, then even the opinion, which is not what we follow, but there is an opinion, which is not the final legal ruling, but the opinion that holds that if it's two Jews, then the Jew is to give half to the other Jew, although that means that neither of them will survive, because that opinion says you can't have a right to drink it and save yourself and allow the other Jew to perish. But even that opinion would agree that if it's a Jew and a Ger Toshav, then in that case, the Jew is to drink the water. All right. And now we're up to the next part. Asur lahoinois Ger Toshav. It is forbidden to oppress a Ger Toshav. Now, in the Torah, we find the word oina'a or hoina'a, and generally speaking, there are two types of oina'a. One is financial, and one is verbal. What it basically means is to cheat or to be unfair or to oppress. So in money, in business, it's forbidden for a Jew to be unfair to his fellow Jew, and for that matter, to the Ger, which we'll not translate or explain that one yet. Likewise, there's a separate prohibition, and these are two of the 613 commandments of the Torah. There's a separate prohibition for the Jew to verbally oppress a fellow Jew. And that's kind of general, and that would basically include saying anything which would hurt his feelings. And the classic example that the rabbis give is, for example, if the person is either a ger tzedek, convert, who became Jewish, or, alternatively, a bal teshuvah, a returnee, one who used to be not observant, and he repented, he returned to the ways of keeping Torah and its commandments. It is forbidden for a Jew to tell that person, that ger or that bal teshuvah, remember your deeds, remember what you used to do, or anything of that nature. That would be the prohibition of oina'ah. So, it is forbidden to do oina'ah to a Ger Toshav. V'oivrim olav al kol al bal toineh. And one would be transgressing this prohibition of thou shalt not oppress. Shenemar, for the pasuk says, lo yiteinenu, do not oppress him. Uveger Toshav advarim amurim. And that verse is to be interpreted with regards to a Ger Toshav. It's a verse in Dvarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 23, verse 17. It's in the Torah portion of Ki Seitzei. And it's speaking there, it's a couple of verses which are discussing providing refuge for a slave that is escaping, that is fleeing from his master. So, it says over there, the final two words in those two verses, Loi toinenu, you shall not oppress him. And what that is referring to is a Ger Toshav, who is similar to an Eved Kanaani. Eved Kanaani, without discussing him at length right now, is a non-Jew who does have a semi-Jewish status. He is a slave who is the property of a Jew. So if this Eved Kanaani runs away and escapes from his master, and he comes to take refuge in the land of Israel with a Jew, then you're not allowed to bring him back to his owner, to his master, but he actually goes free, and Loi toinenu. So similarly, we have a tradition that those words of Loi toinenu, don't oppress him, clearly refer to the Ger Toshav. And then there are those that say that this is referring to verbal oina'ah, as opposed to financial or monetary oina'ah. V'chein, and likewise, hakoivesh schar sachir shel ger toshav, if one is withholding wages. So again, the relationship between one Jew and another Jew is very clear. A Jew who is an employer is forbidden to withhold wages of his Jewish employee. As a matter of fact, unless there's a different arrangement, if he works during the day, you have that next night to pay up. Till the morning, you have to pay up for the day work. If he's a night worker, you have the entire next day to pay up until nightfall of the next night. You have to pay up. Unless, of course, they made a different arrangement. And that's fine. And then they agree to that. And you can pay, you can give him his salary, and you can pay him once a week, once a month, once a year, whatever the arrangement is made. But otherwise, whatever the arrangement was made, he must be paid in a timely fashion. Now that's between one Jew and another Jew. Now, if a Jew has a non-Jew, a regular goy, who is working for him, then he's not going to be transgressing if he does not pay on time, as long as he eventually pays him up what he owes him. But he doesn't have to pay on time. So, Ger Toshav, to be treated, in this case, like a Jew. The Jew will be transgressing if he does not pay the Ger Toshav in a timely fashion. Oiver olav, he would be transgressing, belav shaloi sashoik, in this prohibition, the negative commandment of you shall not withhold wages. And we learn that out very clearly because the verse, again in Dvarim, chapter 24, verse 14. Lo yisa ashoik, sachir ani ve'evyoin, mei achecha, oy mi gercha asher ba'artzecha b'she'arecha. You must not withhold the wages of a poor or destitute hired worker, regardless of whether he is one of your brothers, one of your, and then it says ger, in your land, or a resident alien within your cities. So, this pasuk, this verse is interpreted as follows. Vidarshu, and the sages in the oral law, in the Talmud, interpret this verse. Mi gercha, when it says, after it says your brother, then it says ger, ze ger tzedek. That's a proper, full-fledged convert. That's someone who's Jewish by conversion. Bishe'arecha, but then the last word of the verse, in your gate, in your city, ze ger toshav oichel nevelos. This is the ger toshav who eats nevela meat, as we discussed last time at length, that's the one who the Jew would give the non-kosher meat of the animal that just died, and the Jew can't eat it. So what do you do with it? So he can sell it to the Nachri, to the non-Jew, or give it to the Ger Toshav. So the Ger Toshav, whatever mitzvahs he keeps, he eats nevela. He eats non-kosher meat. And this verse, which is speaking about not withholding wages, clearly, explicitly mentions your fellow Jew, the Ger, which is the convert, and Bishe'arecha, which we're saying is the Ger Toshav. Shenemar boy, for with regards to the Ger Toshav, it says, La ger asher bisharecha titnena v'achala. To the ger, which is in your gates, you shall give it, referring to the nevela, non-kosher meat, and he shall eat it. V'hu echad min advarim shu shaveh bahem liYisrael. And this, in fact, is one of those things which he is equal to a Jew, as far as the prohibition against withholding wages. He's the same as a Jew. Now, there's also a positive commandment associated with paying wages on time. You see, in the 613 commandments, as we mentioned a number of times, the way that they're divided are 365 of them are negative. They're prohibitions, known as lo yisaseh, don't do, which means that there are 248 positive commandments called aseh, do. Now, many times, a positive commandment and a negative commandment are counterparts. And many times it's impossible not to fulfill both commandments simultaneously, or, God forbid, to transgress them simultaneously. There are many of the commandments that when the person fulfills the positive commandment, he is automatically fulfilling and keeping the negative commandment, which says, don't do the opposite. And likewise, when he transgresses, he's not only transgressing the negative commandment, but he's automatically transgressing the positive one, which says, do this, and he's not doing it. So, paying wages on time is one of those commandments, where aside for this verse, which says, you are not to withhold wages, there's the positive verse, which says, you are to pay the wages on time, on the day. So now, with regards to one Jew and another Jew, employer-employee, he's clearly fulfilling both commandments if he pays the wage on time. But if he withholds it and he fails to pay on time, he's clearly transgressing both. Well, what about the Ger Toshav? So with regards to the Ger Toshav, so far we stated that he is transgressing the negative. And that brings us to the last two lines on this column. Again, we're on Reish Tzadik Gimel. Milvad zeh, aside for transgressing with the Ger Toshav of where it says that you are not to withhold the wages, oiver beger Toshav kishakevish es scharoi, oy kishaicher milashalmoi. So the Jew is actually transgressing with regards to the Ger Toshav when he withholds the wages, or when he's late in the payment. Gam mishum beyoymo yisitein scharoi. He's also transgressing the positive commandment that you are to pay him on time. Lefi, we're on the top of Reish Tzadik Daled 294. Lefi, sheboisei inyan shekasuv beyoyme sitein scharoi nemar loisashoik sachir v'geimer bishe arecha. Because in the same concept where it says the positive commandment that you are to pay his wages on the day, it says you are not to withhold payment, and it again uses the word bishe'arecha, in your gate. Shedarshu al ger toshav. And that's what we said, that the tradition of the oral Torah is that that's referring to the ger toshav. Now, there are other prohibitions that a person would be transgressing when he fails to pay the wages on time. Not only one negative and one positive, with regards to, again, a Jew and a Jew. V'nechleku tanoim. However, there is a dispute amongst the Tanoic sages, the Mishnah sages. Im oiver gam mishum shor halavin. Is the Jew, the employer, transgressing all the other additional prohibitions, negative commandments, which were stated with regards to one who is withholding payment? Yesh oimrim, there are those that say, there's another verse that says that you cannot allow the sun to set on him. And some say that that would be the same thing with the Ger Toshav. It's an additional verse. And then we have another verse which says, you shall not let the payment of your worker tarry overnight. So you transgress that as well. And then we have another verse which says that you're not to withhold payment from your fellow. And then it says you cannot steal. This is a form of stealing. Withholding payment is stealing, even though eventually you're going to pay him. So all of these verses are compounded, and they are all added. So between one Jew and another Jew, when the employer is not paying his employee on time, he's clearly transgressing a whole list of negative commandments and one positive. And according to some, Same thing would apply to the Ger Toshav. Lefi shelamedim b'gzeira shava, sachir, because we learn out in a type of a rule called a gzeira shava. A gzeira shava is basically a rule in Talmud, in the oral law, where if you have the same word written in a verse in one place, and that same expression is used elsewhere, so then we're able to apply one to the other. And the Torah need not repeat everything again, but it's a form, it's a code, if you will, of applying what it says in one place to the other place. That is called a gezeira shava. So it says the word sachir, which means a hired worker. It says that word twice. Nemar kan lo yisashik sachirani. It says here a verse, do not withhold the payment of a poor hired worker. V'nemar sham, and it says there, another verse, lo yisalin pulas sachir. Do not let the payment of a hired worker stay overnight. L'rabois, and this is coming to include shebeger toishav omer kan shelamdu mi she'arecha, that even though the word she'arecha, your gate, which that was the key word, that was the word that taught us Ger Toshav, even though that word is not repeated each time. But since the word sachir is, we keep on referring back to the original word of she'arecha, where the verse said clearly that you are not allowed to withhold payment of your brother and of the ger, your ger, and of the one who lives bishe'arecha in your gate. That was the Ger Toshav. So therefore, it says the word sachir, so we apply it across the board. Therefore, the person would be transgressing the entire list of the prohibitions which are there. Shehem, which they are, lo yisalin v'lo yisashoy kesreyecha v'lo yisig zoil, which we mentioned before. All the different forms of being dishonest, of not paying on time. That's one opinion. V'yesh oimrim, and then there is the other opinion amongst the Tanoim, she'einoi oiver, that the Jew who is not paying his hired Ger Toshav on time is not transgressing, ela mishum b'yoymei sitein scharoi. He's only transgressing the two prohibitions, one negative, one positive. The negative, which we started off with, which clearly says in the verse, bisharecha, and the positive commandment of pay him on time. Ve'ein bo mishum bal tolim, and it does not apply the prohibition of bal tolin, that you're not to let it stay overnight without paying him. Because they don't hold of, they don't accept this gezeira shava of the word sachir and the word sachir. They say, no, we don't go for that. As a matter of fact, in the verse which says, Lo yisalin, you shall not let it stay overnight without paying him, the verse there clearly adds the word reyacha. It says your fellow, and it doesn't say bishe'arecha. L'mayit Ger Toshav. And therefore, reyacha is coming to exclude the Ger Toshav. So the Ger Toshav, everybody agrees, the person would be transgressing the first verse. However, the additional one, since it says reyacha, and it does not say bishe'arecha, so therefore it's excluding the Ger Toshav. Ulefichach, and therefore, ein boy gam mishum lo yisashak es reyacha v'lo yisigzol hamur and boy kasuv. Therefore, in the same verse where it says the other two prohibitions, they're also excluded from the Ger Toshav. Aval, however, yesh boy, what there is with regards to the Ger Toshav, mishum halavin aksuvim bo'isoi inyan. There are the prohibitions which are written in that same topic. Shall be yoymoi sitein scharoi, of the verse which states the positive that you have to pay him on time in his day. Hainu lo yisashek sachir, meaning you're not allowed to withhold the payment of a hired worker. V'kol shekain hu sharei boy hu shekasu b'sharecha shu Ger Toshav. So certainly the Ger Toshav, because that's the verse which says bishe'arecha, and we learn out Ger Toshav. V'chein mishum lo yisavu elav hashemesh And likewise, there is the other prohibition of the sun may not set on him without you paying him, because that's written in the same verse where it says the positive, the paying him on time. So therefore, there actually is more than one prohibition, just not the whole list of things. So now we move on to the Rishonim, which are the early commentaries post-Talmud. So they're much later than the Tanoim. So this was a dispute of Tanoim, but then later, what's called the Rishonim, the first post-Talmudic commentators, some of them say, She'eino oiver beger toishav, elo mishum b'yoyim mesitein schare bilvad, ve'eino oiver b'lo yisase klal. Some maintain that the only prohibition, the only transgression, I should say, the only transgression is for the positive commandment of paying him on time. But when a Jew does not pay his Ger Toshav, a hired Ger Toshav, on time, he's not transgressing any prohibition, he's only transgressing the positive commandment. And that is actually the way the Rambam rules, as well as the Smag, which is one of the early codifiers, Sefer Mitzvahs Gadol. And a later commentary, the Ritva, says that this is very difficult to understand, because if there's a dispute of the Tanoim as to whether it's all of the negative commandments or just some, how can anyone after that say that it's none of the negative commandments that he's transgressing? But be that as it may, there is that opinion that the Jew would only be transgressing the positive commandment of paying him on time. So that's the very least. So bottom line, if a Jew has a Ger Toshav, that's a hired worker for him, he must pay him on time. And if he doesn't, at the very least, he is transgressing a positive commandment of paying his worker on time, which would not apply to a regular guy. Next. Chayovim Beis Shel Yisrael. The Jewish court is obligated lahamid, to appoint, to place, shoiftim, judges, legerim teishavim, for the community of the Ger Toshav, for those people, ladun lahem, to judge for them, al pi mishpatim shel bnei Noach, based on the laws of the bnei Noach. It's the Jewish community, the Jewish court system, which has the responsibility to appoint judges. We didn't say whether they're Jewish or non-Jews, but they have to appoint judges to judge the Ger Toshav community according to the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach rules. In order that the world should not become corrupted or destroyed. Imro beis lahamid shoftei mehem ma'amidim, v'imro lahamid lehem Yisrael ma'amidim. So now, are these judges supposed to be Jews, or are they supposed to be Bnei Noach, non-Jews, like Ger Toshav? So, according to the Rambam, either way is fine. Whatever the Jewish Beis Din sees fit, if they see fit to appoint non-Jewish judges, that's what they should do. And if they see fit to appoint a Jewish judges, that's what they should do. The chol zeh, and all of this, davka imheim loy hamidul Beis Din me'atzmam. This is only, so to say, by default. If the Ger Toshav community, the Bnei Noach community, if they failed to appoint their own judges, so then the Jewish court has a responsibility to step in and appoint the judges, either Jews or Bnei Noach. Or, alternatively, the non-Jewish community doesn't have anyone who's fit to be a judge. They would have liked to do it. It wasn't negligence. They simply don't have anyone who is equipped and who is fit to be the judge. So then again, the Beis Din has to appoint someone. Then in that case, the Jewish court is obligated to appoint judges to judge them. Now, this next piece, we're on the top of Reish Tzadik Hey, 295, is different than the rule with a regular goy. And you'll probably pick it up on your own, but if not, I will spell it out after we do this paragraph. Yisrael v'Ger Toshav, a Jew and a Ger Toshav, sheba'u ladin, that came to court to be judged. They have a dispute between the two of them, and the Jew and the Ger Toshav are coming to the Jewish court to be judged. Ein danim tamid kitzad azchus liYisrael. We do not always automatically judge according to the benefit of the Jew. Hainu, meaning to say, shim yesh zchus liYisrael bedin teira, that if the Jew would have merit and would win the case, according to Jewish law, if it was between two Jews, then, and this Jew would win, Yodunu lam bedinenu. So then we would say, okay, let's go according to Jewish law, and then the Jew would win over the Ger Toshav. And then we would say to the Ger Toshav, look, this is our rules, this is our law. If it was between this Jew, and if a different Jew had your position, this Jew would win, so he wins. And if the Jew actually would have merit in the secular law, Yodunu loy bedineihem, then we go according to the secular law, and we would tell the Ger Toshav, hey, this is your law, this is your rule. We don't do all of that. But rather, we always go according to the secular law. If it's between a Jew and a Ger Toshav, we follow the secular law, even if that means that the Ger Toshav will win and the Jew will lose. Now, what I'm saying that this is different, which was very implicit from the reading over here, is if it's not a Ger Toshav, but it's a regular guy who is coming to be judged, he says, I want to be judged by the Jewish court. It's between me and a Jew, it's not two non-Jews. Well, even then, they can have the option to come to Jewish court. But the two litigants are a Jew and a goy, and the goy agrees to come to be judged in the Jewish court. In that case, we say that if there's merit for the Jew, we always follow that. And if, by Jewish law, the Jew would win, but if it were to be judged by secular law, the non-Jew would win, then we make the Jew win, and we tell the non-Jew, that's our law. And if, by Jewish law, the Jew would actually lose, but in the secular law, the Jew would win, then we judge according to secular law, and we tell the non-Jew, your law. So that's it. You came to us, true, but we're going to judge this case according to non-Jewish law because you're not Jewish, and therefore the Jew wins. That would be between a Jew and a regular goy. Between a Jew and a Ger Toshav, we don't do that. We go only according to the non-Jewish secular law.
By non-Jewish secular law, you're referring to the 7 laws, or I mean, where would non-Jewish secular law exist with the in a situation with Ger Toshav?
Well, one option would be that if it were to be between two non-Jews, what would the halacha be? See, for example, the law of paying double, or 4 or 5 times the amount at times, that's strictly a Jewish law. So even in the times of the Yovel and in the land of Eretz Yisrael, with the Sanhedrin and a Ger Toshav, but if there's a dispute between two non-Jews, we don't judge them according to that. So in that case, for example, in that case, we would not make whoever it is pay double. So let's say the damager or the thief was the Jew. And if it would be two Jews, so he'd have to pay double. And in this case, the poor Ger Toshav fellow is only getting compensation. He's not getting double or 4 or 5 times the amount of the original, the principal. However, it's the other way around. If the Ger Toshav is the one who damaged the Jew, and according to Jewish law, the Ger Toshav would have to pay him double or 4 or 5 times the amount. We don't make him pay that because that's a Jewish law and the Ger Toshav is not Jewish. So we always go by the non-Jewish law, whether it's for the benefit of the Jew or the benefit of the Ger Toshav. So that really is a pretty strong case. So far, what we've learned today is a number of cases where the Ger Toshav, again, I don't want to misrepresent the Ger Toshav. Again, I said many times, and I'll say it again, the Ger Toshav is not at all Jewish. He's not a little bit Jewish. However, we do see that he is treated legally different than a regular non-Jew. So far we've learned how he's like a Jew with regards to treating him, whether it is paying wages on time, or whether it is not to oppress him, or coming to court. And the next piece is going to be those things where he's like a goy. He's not like a Jew, he's like a goy. Dalet dvarim shehushva legoy. So now the fourth subsection in this entry of Ger Toshav, out of the 8 sections. So number 4 now is those things that he is equal to a regular non-Jew. Loivim mi Ger Toshav umalvim loy beribis. The Jew borrows money and lends money to and from the Ger Toshav with interest. Shenemar, because the verse which forbids interest with regards to loans of a Jew, the verse states, Al tikach me'itoy, do not take from him neshech v'sarbis, which are 2 expressions of interest. That's the verse in Vayikra, Leviticus 25, verse 36. Now it says in that verse, me'itoy, from him. That means me'Yisrael, from a Jew. Shemusav, because that word is going back, it's referring al achecha shnemar kodim lechen, with regards to the word your brother, which is written beforehand in the verse. V'zeh shenemar sham ger v'toishav, that which it says over there, ger v'soishav. Einoi el linyan v'chayim machom sham. It's only with regards to what it says there that he shall live with you, shemitzuvim lachayoisei, which, as we discussed last class, that verse teaches us that we, the Jewish community, is obligated to give him life, to support him, to sustain him. But not with regards to borrowing and lending with interest, without interest, rather. V'yesh shelamduhu, and some learn out that it is permissible to charge interest or to pay interest from the Ger Toshav. Mima shenemar, from what the verse says, Lo yisashich la'achicha. Do not allow yourself to be bitten by your brother, meaning don't borrow with having to pay interest. La'achicha asur l'shar ha'olam mutar. Meaning only for your brother, from your brother it is forbidden, but to the rest of the world, anybody who's not a fellow Jew, it is permitted. So we have 2 verses where we can possibly learn it out from, but one thing is clear. The prohibition of charging interest or paying interest only applies between one Jew and another Jew. Even a Ger Toshav, this is a case where the Jew does pay him interest if he borrowed money from the Ger Toshav, or does charge interest if he lent money to the Ger Toshav. Eved Ivri. An Eved Ivri is a Jewish slave. Very different than the Eved Knani that we mentioned earlier. Eved Knani, the non-Jewish slave, is actual property of the Jew, and because of that, many rules apply to him. And legally or technically, you can kind of refer to him as semi-Jewish. He basically has to keep all the mitzvahs that a Jewish woman has to keep, meaning all of the negative, all the prohibitions apply to him, and some of the positive do and some don't. Whatever a woman doesn't have to keep, which is basically a time-bound positive commandment, he doesn't have to keep. He has to be circumcised. He belongs to the Jew. Eved Ivri, not to be confused with that at all. And if we don't specify, and we say the word Eved, whenever we find throughout the entire Talmud, all of the Mishnah and Talmud, the term Eved comes up very often. If it's not explicit, not specified, the assumption should be Eved means Eved Kanani. Eved Ivri is a regular Jew who sold himself or was sold by the Jewish court. And it's only for a few years. Typically, if a person stole money and he has no means to pay up, so the Jewish court would, quote unquote, sell him to the person who he stole from, and that's how he pays up his debt. So now, an Eved Ivri, Shemicharuhu Beistin, that the Jewish court sold him to a Jew. Ein moichri moisoi. So now the Jew who bought him, who owns him, may not sell him Elo Yisrael, only to a fellow Jew, Oy leger tzedek, or to a ger tzedek, a righteous convert, because he's also Jewish. So a Jew who owns a fellow Jew as an Eved Ivri may sell his Eved Ivri to either another person who was born Jewish or to a person who converted and became Jewish. And likewise, if a Jew is selling himself voluntarily, not by the Jewish court, but he's selling himself because he's come about rough times and he can't make money, so he figured, I want to sell myself and I'll work for this person, that way I get free room and board, and that's the arrangement he wants to make. So he has that option to sell himself. It's not a proper thing to do, and that's why if he wants to stay on longer, so then there's the commandment of having to pierce his ear to the door, and that's a sort of a punishment because it's symbolic of the ear that heard at Mount Sinai that you, all the Jewish people, God says, are my servants, and you're not servants to others. I took you out of bondage, out of slavery in Egypt. You're my servants and only my servants. And you went ahead and you sold yourself to someone else. So it's not a proper thing to do. But if a Jew sells himself as a slave, he is not allowed to sell himself to a non-Jew. Even if the non-Jew is a Ger Toshav, it is forbidden for a Jew to sell himself to a Ger Toshav. That is the ruling of the Rambam of Maimonides in the laws of Avodim of slaves, chapter 1. V'chein shaninu. And likewise we have learned. Minayin, from where do we know? Kishemoicher atzmoi, when the Jew sells himself, lo yimacher ella lecha. He can only sell himself to you, a fellow Jew. Talmud loymar. So the verse teaches us, v'nimkar lecha, and he will be sold to you. Minayin kishebeistin moichri moisoi. From where do we know that when the Jewish court sells the individual Jew as a slave, einoi nimkar ella lecha, he can only be sold to you, a fellow Jew. Talmud loymar, the verse states, ki yimacher lecha, for when he will be sold to you. All right. So an Eved Ivri cannot be owned by a Ger Toshav, either directly or indirectly. A Jew can't sell his Eved Ivri to a Ger Toshav. A Jew cannot sell himself as an Eved to a Ger Toshav, only to fellow Jews. Next, Shmitas Ksafim. We know that there's the sabbatical year, every 7th year, there's a cycle. And that year, aside from the agricultural laws of all the produce and all the fields in the land of Israel, that basically anything owned by a Jew, all the fields, have to be left alone completely. And for that year, they're ownerless. There's also a concept of loan of money, of loans that become abolished. And if a Jew lent money to another Jew, and then came the sabbatical year, that abolishes the loan, and the Jew, the borrower, does not have to pay back the lender. So Shmitas Ksofim Bishnas Shmita. This type of annulment of debts in the sabbatical year does not apply with regards to the Ger Toshav. Just as it does not apply with regards to the regular non-Jew. Shenemar, because the verse states clearly, Lo yigois esreyehu ve'es achiv, that a person shall not oppress or demand payment from his fellow and from his brother. Achiv, so this word brother, his brother, Prat l'ger Toshav, is coming to exclude the Ger Toshav, that he's certainly not your brother, even if you want to say that he would fall into the category of your fellow, because he's not a regular non-Jew, but he's not the Jew's brother, that for sure. And since the verse says your brother, therefore it doesn't apply. So if a Ger Toshav owes a debt, a financial debt, to the Jew, even though he lives in the land of Israel and he has rights and all that, and like we said, you're obligated to support him and sustain him financially, so he owes you money, the debt is not abolished and he still owes the money even past the sabbatical year. If a Jew sells his Eved, the non-Jewish Eved, to a Ger Toshav, this is considered the same thing as selling his Eved, his slave, to a regular non-Jew. Which means he goes automatically out free. If a Jew sells his Eved to a non-Jew, he is just freed. That is the bill of freedom for that Eved. In other words, a Jew can sell his Eved to another Jew. You can't sell your Eved to a non-Jew. And if the Jew does, he's freeing his Eved. Same thing applies if he sells him to a Ger Toshav. In other words, again, a Ger Toshav is considered like a non-Jew, not like a Jew. Uknas chachamimhu. And this case is a rabbinic fine. It's a rabbinic edict. Because the reason for that is, by selling your Eved, you are freeing him from keeping the Jewish commandments. So that's a negative thing. Because as long as he's an Eved Kanani owned by a Jew, he has to keep many mitzvahs, like a woman, we said. And as soon as the Jew is selling his Eved Kanani to a non-Jew, whoever that may be, well, then obviously he doesn't have to keep mitzvahs. He's owned by a non-Jew. He can't have to keep more than his master does. That for sure not. So therefore, the Chachamim, the sages, came along and they said, a Jew who sells his Eved Kanani to a non-Jew, we're decreeing that he goes free as a penalty.
I was curious, what happens to that Eved Kanani then? Because if an Eved Kanani is freed by the Jew, he takes on he becomes like a Jew. It's like a conversion for him. But if he is sold to the non-Jew and he's freed, what's his status then?
I think it's the same as being freed.
So then he would become like a regular Jew.
Yeah.
Even though he's being freed by
default.
Yeah, but it's like so that doesn't affect his status. Correct.
And again, because we don't want to minimize his commandments, if anything, now he becomes a free Jew, so now he becomes like a male Jew. So he's obligated, he became, this is actually the final process of his conversion, because he already did the other things. So I believe that would be the case here. And that would also apply if he sold to a Ger Toshav. Now, In the Torah portion of Tazria and Mitzaira, where it speaks about afflictions called Nigaim, or specifically Tzara'as, which is not really to be translated into English. Many translate as leprosy. No, leprosy is a very specific type of a skin disease. This was a miraculous punishment. It's similar to, so that's why they call it leprosy. Or maybe there's even something today in English called psoriasis, and I'm pretty sure that comes from the biblical word tsaras. So I don't think there's really a proper translation to tsaras. It's different types of miraculous skin diseases, which are different shades of white, and there's many, many details and laws about that. Now, and if a person gets that and it's the appropriate color, then that person became impure and he has to be separated and segregated and sit outside of the camp, and he has to be checked by the kohen, by the priest, at the end of a week, and he's got to go through the whole process. And then he's got to immerse in the ritual bath in the mikveh, and then he has to have a certain mixture sprinkled on him, and it's all processed as it is clearly written in the book of Leviticus, in the portions of Tazria, and particularly in Mitzaira, rather, in the parsha of Mitzaira. Okay. Now, Hakol mitamim b'negoyim. Everybody, all Jews, man, woman, anybody, can become afflicted and therefore be in a status of impurity with these afflictions. Chutz min hanachri v'ger toshav. We're saying everybody, except for the non-Jew and the Ger Toshav. So everybody can become impure, except for the non-Jew and the Ger Toshav. Aval benigei begadim. But when it comes to afflictions, this sickness on the garment. So let me mention, there are 3 types of nigoyim, of tzaras, of this affliction. One is on the skin, on the flesh of the person. One is on his garment, and one is on the walls of his house. Those are the 3 types. And each one has their laws of what to do. Very, very detailed. The affliction of the body, the skin, that only applies to Jews. If a non-Jew, even a Ger Toshav, gets the exact same discoloring, exactly the same, identical, he's not impure, it means nothing, it's not considered tsaras. Even though physically, biologically, in the laboratory, under the microscope, all the doctors will tell you this is identical, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. He's a Jew, it's a nega, it's an affliction. He's a non-Jew, even a Ger Toshav, it's not. However, when it comes to the house becoming afflicted, afilu shel Ger Toshav mitamim midrabanan, then even the house of a Ger Toshav does become impure rabbinically. They decreed that. And I'm saying house. I meant a garment, but now comes house. V'chein b'nigei batim, and likewise the house. So those 2 categories, rabbinically speaking, the rabbis decreed that the Ger Toshav's garments and houses can become tamei. V'gazru al nigei begadim ubatim v'lo al nigei gufay. Why did they make the decree on the Ger Toshav's garments and house, and not on his body? Lefi shenigei aguf tarason tluya bekarban v'Ger Toshav einay ben karban shel choiva. Very simple. Because in those 2 cases of a person's garment or walls of his house becoming impure with tsaras, when he goes through the process of purification, he need not bring any sacrifice. However, when the person became afflicted and impure of tsaras of the body, so part of the process of him becoming purified is to bring sacrifices. And the Ger Toshav cannot bring any obligatory sacrifice like a regular goy. The only carbon that a goy can bring is a carbon oila, a burnt offering, and it has to be brought as a vow or as a donation or just out of his free will to come close to God, and he wants to bring a sacrifice. Fine. But he can't bring any obligatory sacrifice. There's no such thing, not a sin offering, not a guilt offering, nothing. Well, here, if the rabbis would decree that he became tamei, that he became impure because he got this tsaras on his skin, well, that means he'd have to go through the whole process, including the sacrifices, and that's forbidden. We can't bring those sacrifices. So therefore, they never made that decree. So they decreed that for the Ger Toshav, his garment and his house can become tamei. It's very interesting. On that note, the next part. Ein Ger Toshav mitame betumas ziva kumei hanochri. The Ger Toshav does not become defiled or impure with the impurity referred to as ziva, just like a regular goy. Ziva is a certain bodily discharge, and it's similar to, but it's different than that which it is similar to. Meaning, for a male, for example, zav is a discharge which in certain way is similar to a seminal omission. However, it is different. So, zav would make him impure, would make a Jew impure, tamei. And for a woman, also, it would be similar to a menstrual omission, but it's different. So, again, a Jewish woman would become impure. Non-Jews doesn't apply. A non-Jewish man who has this omission, that omission, does not make him impure. And a non-Jewish woman who has this omission, that does not make her impure. Umide Rabbanon, however, the rabbis, rabbinically, Gazru olav shia kizav, they did decree on the Ger Toshav that if he has this omission, he should be considered impure like a zav, just as they decreed on the regular non-Jew. So rabbinically speaking, the non-Jew is tamei, is impured if he has this omission. Next. Tis forbidden to feed the Ger Toshav from the flesh of the Paschal offering. Okay? And the 14th of the month of Nisan, there is the mitzvah, the commandment for the Jews to offer the Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering. And amongst those that cannot eat from it is the Ger Toshav. Shenemar, for the verse states, Toshav v'sachir lo yochal boy. That a Toshav and a hired worker shall not eat from it. Toshav, how do we interpret this word Toshav in the verse? Ze Ger Toshav. This is referring to the Ger Toshav. Yochol, I may think, imu mohul v'kibul olav sheva mitzvahs b'nei noyach she'enoi ben nechar. Now the Torah says you can't have a ben nechar, a foreigner, eat from it. Ben nechar, so nechar is the same root as the word nachri. So and ben would mean a member of. So I would think, well, how about if he was circumcised? And he formally accepted upon himself the 7 mitzvahs of Noach. Maybe then he can eat from the Paschal offering, because he's not a ben nechar. Talmud loymar, so the verse states, Toshav v'sachir lo yochal boy. Even if he's not a ben nechar, but he is a Toshav. V'chol hamachil kezayis min ha-pesach. And anyone, any Jew, who feeds, the kezayis is the required amount for a Jew to eat in order to fulfill his obligation of eating basically anything. In this case, we're talking about the Paschal offering. So how much meat of the Paschal offering does a Jew need to eat to fulfill his requirement? It's at least a kezayis, which is a biblical type of a measurement. Well, the rabbis are the one who coined the term. Literally, it means like an olive. Basically, it's a certain measurement of, its volume. It's roughly 1 ounce. In our measurements, it's roughly 1 ounce. That is the amount, the minimal amount required. Less than that, the person did not fulfill his obligation, and therefore, in this case, he wouldn't have transgressed, technically, or he wouldn't be punished. So if a Jew feeds a kezayis or more of the meat of the Korban Pesach, bein mi Pesach Rishon, bein mi Pesach Sheni, whether it is the first Passover, which is in the month of Nisan, or when it comes to Passover, there's a second chance in the 14th of the second month of the year, of the Jewish month of Iyar, which is for anybody who missed the first one because they were either impure at the time, a Jew, or they were far away from Jerusalem and they couldn't make it. So therefore, a month later, they have an opportunity to do it again. So whether it's the regular Korban Pesach or whether it's the second Pesach, a Jew who feeds flesh of that Korban, of that animal, Ger Toshav, to a Ger Toshav, he is transgressing this negative commandment. He does not receive the floggings. We do not strike him. But we do hit him with what is referred to as makas mardus, which is a term used for rabbinic lashes. And it's not with a whip, instead it's with a stick. And the rabbis decided if and when and how much to give it. It's not as clear and as rigid and as specific and precise as the 39 lashes for transgressing any one of a couple hundred of the biblical prohibitions. So when a Jew transgresses rabbinic prohibitions, some of them, so then the punishment would be that the Jewish court would administer what's called makas mardus, which means hitting a person who's rebellious. So in this case, the person would not get the biblical punishment of lashes, but he would get the rabbinic one, even though he's transgressing a biblical law. It's biblically forbidden, but not every biblical prohibition has the same punishment. But the Ger Toshav, he's not commanded not to eat from that meat. The Jew can't feed it to him. The Jew giving him that meat is transgressing. The Ger Toshav is not commanded against eating it. It's strictly the Jew's commandment. God commands the Jew not to feed, not to give this meat to the Ger Toshav. But the Ger Toshav is not forbidden from eating it. But nonetheless, even though the Jew is commanded not to give it to him, but still, as we said, the Jew does not get the biblical punishment of the floggings. That's because of technicality. Because it's considered a negative commandment which has no action. Because you can just have the meat there and invite him or allow him or tell him to go eat it. So you didn't do anything. In other words, in order to get the 39 lashes, it's got to be a transgression which has to, by definition, be a physical act. For example, anything which is only verbal speaking, then they don't get the lashes for it. There's no punishment of lashes because it's called a negative, a prohibition, which has no act. Or alternatively, why doesn't he get the lashes? Because the verse does not state explicitly, don't feed them. Therefore, even though it is a prohibition, it is a biblical prohibition, but because it's not written in an explicit way, explicit enough, therefore there's no punishment of lashes. But there are those Rishonim, those early codifiers, that hold that in fact the Ger Toshav himself is commanded not to eat. There are those that say that it is a commandment and he also is transgressing and he's commanded not to eat. And some argue and say that this entire prohibition is not regarding the Ger Toshav at all, because he is considered an uncircumcised person, and therefore he's forbidden. You don't have to get into whether he is the Toshav or the Ben Nechar. There's a separate category that can't eat from it. Even a Jew, if he is uncircumcised, cannot eat from the Korban Pesach. Not only that, a Jew who any of his male immediate family, children, or his slaves are uncircumcised, that will not allow him to eat from the Korban Pesach. So since the Ger Toshav is uncircumcised, he's not a Evet Kanani, he doesn't have to be circumcised. Therefore, they say, that's why he's out of the picture of eating the Korban Pesach. Next, Ger Toshav, Dinoi Kinachri. Ger Toshav has the same status as a regular non-Jew, Le'inyan Bitul Reshus B'Shabbos, with regards to nullifying or disowning or absolving his domain with regards to Shabbos law. Meaning, Shim Haya Pesach Beisai Pasuach L'Chatzer Sheshnei Yisraelim Darim Ba. We have a concept, without getting into it in too much detail, that a Jew can carry items and articles and move things around on Shabbos in his own private domain. And what about if you have several Jewish houses next to each other? Then it's not so simple. In today's most common case would be an apartment building. So you have the common hallway between them. So in order to allow the Jews to carry in the common area, or the example, the classic example in the Mishnah and the Talmud would be houses that open up to a courtyard. Because you have that nowadays as well. So you have a common courtyard. So how could they carry in the courtyard? So what they need to do is make a type of an eruv. An eruv in this case would be called eruv chatzerois, an eruv of courtyards, and that's done by taking food, and generally we take matzah because we want it to last for the whole year. You could do it every week and take bread, take challah, but otherwise they take the Passover matzah, and they designate that, and then that will allow them all to carry in the common area. Problem, what happens if you have a non-Jew amongst the tenants? He owns one of the houses. So if his entrance of his house opens up to a courtyard where two Jews live there, that will forbid them from carrying, and they can't even make the Eruv because of the Goy. The only way they can make an Eruv is if all the tenants are Jewish. So that's the way it is with a guy. And we're saying the Ger Toshav is the same status, meaning, it does not help. The non-Jew cannot say, you know what, I give up my ownership, so to say, or I give up my rights to the common area for Shabbos. I want to be nice to you guys. I don't want you guys not to be able to carry because of me. So I'm nullifying my ownership. Won't work. In order to allow them to carry, can't do it. In other words, by a Jew it would work. Let's say you have 3 Jews, and 2 of them made the Eruv, and the third one forgot. He didn't include himself with them. So he's not part of it. So then what he can do is, on Shabbos he can say, I nullify my ownership, my partnership in that common area, and forget it. That will allow the 2 of them to carry. So a Jew could do that. A non-Jew cannot do that on Shabbos. Ella, rather, just as a regular non-Jew cannot on Shabbos just nullify it, so to the Ger Toshav cannot. So in this regard, the Ger Toshav is exactly like a regular Nachri, like a regular non-Jew, and he cannot just give up as a Jew can. Top of Reish Tzadik Zayin 297. Yisrael Echad Hadarim Ger Toshav B'Chatzer. One Jew who shares a courtyard with a Ger Toshav. So there's only 2 houses. It's an apartment building with 2 apartments. One is a Jew, one is a Ger Toshav. Well, what about the hallway, their common area? So this Ger Toshav does not forbid the Jew from carrying there. Again, just like a goy, like a regular non-Jew. There have to be at least 2 Jews in that courtyard. In other words, if you have 2 Jews living in an apartment building, then they can't carry until they make an Eruv. If you have a building with 2 apartments, that common area, neither of them can carry on Shabbos unless they make an Eruv. However, if there's a Jew and a non-Jew, then the Jew could carry. He doesn't need to make an Eruv because there's no other Jew there. And what about if it's a Ger Toshav instead of a regular guy? He's just like a guy, and therefore the Jew could carry. Until there are 2 Jews, then the Jew cannot carry unless he has a proper Eruv. We do not accept from a Ger Toshav money that he donated for the altar in the Beis HaMikdash, v'heichal, or for the actual Beis HaMikdash, v'azarais, for the sanctuary there, v'choimas Yerushalayim, or for the wall of Jerusalem, u'migdaloiseha, or for its towers, u'tzarchei ha'ir, and for any of the needs of the city. And even if he is offering, he's donating his services for free. He says, you know what, I'm not going to give you money. I'll do the work for you. And you don't have to pay me. Nope. Just like we don't accept from a regular guy, we do not accept these types of donations for the Beis HaMikdash or for Jerusalem from the Ger Toshav. Shenemar, for the verse in Ezra, states, Loi lachem v'lanu livnei v'gemer. It is not for you and for us to build the house of Hashem, but it's a specific requirement that the Jews have, and we're not supposed to allow the non-Jews to partake in the actual building of it, including a Ger Toshav. Ein mitzvah steichachol a Ger Toshav. There's no mitzvah of rebuking or reprimanding a Ger Toshav. A Jew is obligated to rebuke a fellow Jew when he does something wrong, when he is sinning. A Jew is not obligated to rebuke the Ger Toshav. Because the verse states, rebuke, you shall rebuke your fellow, v'loi Ger Toshav, to exclude the Ger Toshav. And finally, Ger Toshav chashud al kol ha'Torah k'moi nachri. A Ger Toshav basically has the same level of trust with regard to any Torah law, just as a regular non-Jew. He is not to be trusted. Although we're talking about a person who formally accepted to keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, that's fine. And he adheres to keeping the 7, that's fine. But when it comes to any Torah law, as far as a Jew needs, for example, to trust someone, so he is not trustworthy. He is considered like a regular non-Jew. We'll leave it at this point, and we are up to Hey with regards to keeping Shabbos, which is a whole discussion for itself, and we'll see that hopefully next time. And until next time, wishing you all the best, and make sure to keep all of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, behave properly, serve God, and see to it to bring about the coming and the complete revelation of our righteous Mashiach now.